Welcome to Unlocked, a NAMFS podcast. In our final episode covering recent HUD regulatory changes, we take a closer look at MCM 4.0 and what it means for the mortgage field services industry. Let's get started.
Everybody, thank you for joining Season 2, Episode 4 of our podcast for the National Asset Management Field Services Organization. I'm Kellie Chambers. I'm President and COO of G7 Service Group. We're a national property preservation company, and I want an opportunity for my panelists to introduce themselves today. Eric, do you want to start?
My name is Eric Miller. I'm the Executive Director of NAMFS. Been so for about 14 years, so looking forward to this conversation.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm Jodi Gaines. I am CEO and co-founder of G7 Service Group and work very closely with Kellie Chambers. I'm also CEO and co-founder of Claims Recovery Financial Services. We are a national claims provider for GSE, government claims, PMI claims, and more.
Great. I'm Brooke Marshall. I am actually the Vice President of Property Preservation for Loan Care. It is a mortgage subservicer. Been doing it for about almost 10 years now. Excited to be part of this panel.
Awesome. I'm excited to have such a good variety of participants for today's conversation. We're going to discuss the award of the Mortgagee Compliance Manager, MCM 4.0 contract by HUD. HUD announced the transition effective November 1 of last year, and we want to talk about what this transition could mean for FHA pre-conveyance activities across the industry. I wanted to provide a little bit of background for our audience here who may not know the full history of the MCM. HUD introduced P260 and MCM 1.0 back in 2010. And the intent was to centralize the pre-conveyance requests under one entity, because before that, servicers were receiving multiple interpretations from the different M&M2 contractors across the country, which created inconsistency and confusion, quite frankly. While centralization brought structure, the first transition, I think all of us on this call, that first transition was challenging. You know, we moved away from a paper process and fax machines to an electronic online process through P260. Great accomplishments by HUD, but still bumpy for the servicers as they were going through that transition. MCM 2.0 came 5 years later. Though it was a change to a new company, there was still some other disruptions that occurred with that transition. Now we have MCM 4.0, and HUD has introduced a brand new company, one with limited experience in our single family space. So that naturally is going to raise questions for us, right? About timing of responses, documentation expectations, workflow adjustments, and potential approval delays. So today we're going to discuss what the industry should be watching for and how to prepare proactively as we navigate this transition. So let's dive in, folks. So for listeners who may not fully understand it, what's the purpose of the Mortgagee Compliance Manager 4.0 contract? And, you know, why does it matter to our field inspectors and contractors? And so let's start with Jodi. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, Kellie. I mean, the purpose is for the MCM to review any bids that exceed the allowable. So in order to have the approval to do that work and for it to be claimable, which is very important, we need the MCM's approval. So not only the bids, but also extensions, right? So when we are at the time of foreclosure or, getting ready to convey, really, we have a very specific time frame in which we must convey those properties. And if there's reasons beyond our control, by working with the MCM, we're allowed to submit extensions, which give us additional time to get that property conveyed. And why are those important? Because it impacts the bottom line. If we don't have the extensions, any work that's completed beyond the time frame is not recoverable, and everybody wants to recover as much money as possible.
Brooke, do you have additional commentary?
Well, the thing I understand with this new contractor is, again, there is limited experience in the single family world. But we also, as servicers and outside of, in the industry, need to understand that they are new. There are going to be delays. They're still trying to understand the full guide and making sure that they're following the policies. But again, we as, you know, in the industry need to understand that we need to keep track of items in order for them to make sure that we're not falling behind just because they're still learning. So I learned that learn patience, and we will get, our stuff approved. It just may take a little bit more time.
Yeah, that's excellent perspective. So patience, I took away from that, be patient during this transition and expect bumps. So that's good feedback for us, Brooke. So Brooke, how might this contract award change audit scrutiny and file reviews in your shop?
So being that they're new awardees, I mean, there is going to be a lot of auditing, there's going to be a lot of file reviews, and there's going to be a lot of expectations that they want to see in this documentation. From what we're seeing, they are ensuring that they're following the guide. So if we are not following the guide, they will be quick to deny those estimates and or extensions. So every little thing right now is being scrutinized. Again, I have to, accept patience that, they're reading and we'll be able to get through it.
Yeah. Jodi, I mean, you are an expert at looking at documentation and getting those audit files so that you can claim the reimbursement for the servicers across the country. I mean, what are your warnings to the field contractors and inspectors that are listening regarding documentation?
The documentation is critical, right? Because I'll say, for starters, if we don't have it, we're not going to claim it, because we're not going to put ourselves and or the clients in a position of a bad hot audit, which is monetary and is risk of extrapolation. So, Kellie, we go way, way back, right? And working with HUD and others. And, it's always documentation. Like, we have to have it. And of course, we're going to work with the vendors in hopes that, if we're missing something, that they can quickly provide it. In worst case scenario, and it's not our preference, but if we don't have it at the initial time of the claim filing, we can always go back and do a supplemental, should they provide it. But that just means longer delays for the servicer to recover their money. And servicers want their money as quickly as possible, and understandably so.
Brooke, what kind of photos and documentation are you looking for to help support that over allowable request upfront proactively?
So it all starts at the first time vacancy inspection. If we are not taking clear photos of every room, every wall, every ceiling, the basement, the attic, the outside, front, back, side, individual outbuildings, if we don't have that up front, then it's most likely down the road, it could become mortgagee neglect. So when we're doing this, we're asking to provide clear photos. I know that we can go through a camera and can, click, but if we can get enough photos, please provide them clearly. Also, the big thing is that sometimes we go in and we, don't report all the damage. Report everything that's damaged, because the nationals will go through and will, weed out what we don't need for HUD. But if, that thing that you may say it's not, required for HUD, may be required for HUD. You just didn't know, the guidelines. So again, for me, it's document. Big key sayings, if you didn't document, you didn't do it. So we got to have all that up front.
Absolutely. Jodi, what kind of photos or documentation beyond what Brooke has shared do you think will become critical to get the OA approval up front?
Well, I mean, just the description, right? What are the description of the services? How much debris, or how, just the details, right? The details really do matter. So having that available up front, and then telling the story, kind of like Brooke said, if there's a water leak, where's this water leak coming from? We have to describe and remediate, right? Because, once you're in there the first time vacant, anything that happens after that really can be, interpreted as mortgagee neglect. So.
Yeah, I think telling the story is going to be really important. I mean, I've been doing this over 25 years, and a day doesn't go by, I hear a new term. I learned a new term recently, shark bite. I had no idea what shark bite was. and it's a plumbing fixture. So there you go. For those that didn't know. But if I'm learning new terminology every day after 25 years, imagine a new company coming into our space, right? So I think, Jodi, your recommendation of really describe it and have a thorough description and tell the story is going to be really critical into getting timely OA responses so that servicers can move quickly and convey the properties on time. So that's great feedback. The other thing I heard Brooke say was, document everything on the first time vacancy. Contractors are, always wanting to go to the next job and make more money, right? Well, the best way to make more money and get to the next job is to do the first job correctly and not have to drive back. So definitely slow down, take all those photos when you're there the first time. So you don't have to return back and get additional photos and do additional descriptions of damages. Good feedback, ladies. So Eric, beyond not driving back to the property and trying to be more thorough when you're there, what other feedback would you have for our inspectors and contractors in the field while we go through this transition, things they should keep in mind?
Yeah, well, they stole a lot of the thunder, obviously, when they were very, very thorough. So, again, I can't reiterate it enough. Patience is really key. For those of you who have been in the industry since the last transition, we know that it took some time. There's some time that's going to take this time as well. NAMFS is actually actively trying to engage with the new MCM. And so more to come from that. But like I said, we're excited about that. Telling a story and making sure that you provide the appropriate details and documentation is absolutely critical. The pictures that you take, as Brooke indicated, yes, I know we can, click, 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 but making sure we take photos that there can be perspective, that there can be a story told, those types of things are absolutely critical. So additionally, I would say really look to tighten up your internal QC processes before you submit. Do it before so that you're not stuck, like we said, running back to a property. I know that is so difficult in today's, industry out there in the field. But again, making sure that we've got everything lined up, everything identified, everything labeled correctly, all those kinds of things before we submit it saves us a ton of time. Again, when somebody's new that's coming in and looking at things, if they're not getting that detail, it is just going to slow up the process. So I think that's really important. If we can standardize, your photo protocols and naming conventions, those are huge. Again, as NAMFS has done a couple of times, we are looking at, okay, can we all come to an agreement on what are some standard photo naming conventions? Because that way we're all using the same terminology. As you indicated, Kellie, somebody might not know what a shark bite is, but they know what a rubber boot is or something along those lines. Again, it's very challenging out there. I would really encourage, vendors to ensure their crews, fully understand the scope of what they're out there to do. I think what you guys both said about the initial inspection, right? That first time you're at the property, if you can really ingrain that spending that extra time there can help you initially as well as down the line, either in gaining bid approvals or the potential of a demand or a chargeback, those are going to be critical. And then, again, kind of looking at your escalation and dispute resolutions are, what your workflows are, make sure those are tight. And finally, again, really reinforce those that you're doing the work with, help them understand the importance of compliance. So I think those are probably it. Like I said, a lot of it was shared by Brooke and Jodi, but those are some things that I would encourage all field service companies to work on.
Yeah, good suggestions, Eric. For inspectors and contractors that are listening to this podcast, I don't think it's a time to panic. in any way, shape, or form. But I do think it's time to prepare. So understanding that there's transition and being proactive. At NAMFS, we try to focus on constantly providing solutions to our membership as well as the industry, and certainly collaboration across all the different members of the industry. So, thank you for joining in for season 2. This is very exciting, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you for watching and listening to Unlocked, a NAMFS podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the NAMFS YouTube channel or follow us wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next Wednesday with another Season 2 conversation, and we look forward to having you join us.